G'day guys, Shane from Shane's Shed. Today we're going to be doing a pretty simple task. I'm going to be doing a tyre rotation. Bit of debate around whether they're required or not. I personally like to do it around every 10,000 Ks. Mainly the fact that you're evening a bit of any abnormal wear that you may get during your daily driving. This can include, especially on that far side, on the outside, rubbing into curbs. You might be damaging that sidewall. It moves the tyre around each corner. A wheel alignment, it could be slightly out. This will affect your wear, possibly on one particular corner. So by moving around, front to rear, left to right, I feel you're prolonging the life of your tyres. Probably something else that I would recommend that you don't see often enough is putting your spare in with your tyre rotation. Now, this is just a personal preference. I personally like to rotate my spare because one, it's getting the same wear as every other tyre, and then two, your tyre, if you're buying, say, normally 5 tyres in one hit, when you come to need that spare, wherever you are, you're not going to have an old spare tyre that's sitting in there that's maybe been there since the car was bought new, so especially in a four-wheel drive. I think you might be a couple hundred Ks away from home. You don't want to have to rely on an old spare tyre, something that's over 10 years old, to get you home. So I think it's one thing that's really neglected quite a bit. Like I said, a lot of this is all personal opinion. You can take my advice however you want it. Doesn't really worry me. The other thing about doing a tyre rotation yourself is that in the event that you do get a flat tyre out by wherever you are, you actually know how to change it. Knowing how to change a flat tyre, I think, is a basic skill in driving a car. Many years ago, I can recall filling up fuel. A guy rocked in, young guy, only just got his licence, rocked in the servo, front tyre was pretty much flat. He jumped out of the car, looked at it, and just the sheer look of dread on his face, you just knew he had no idea what he was doing. So I think that just empowers you to get yourself out of the crap when you need it. Roadside assistance may not always be available, so just bear that in mind. It's a good thing to do, just brushes up your skills. So for a 5 tyre rotation, what I'd recommend is your left front moves to the rear, left rear. Your left rear moves to the right front. Right front goes to spare, and your spare to the right rear, and just keep rotating right around. For 4 tyres, fronts to the back, and the backs cross over left to right, over to the front. Directional tyres, simply front to rear. Because they're directional, they can only rotate one way. You can't swap them over left to right sides. So as you can see, I've got 2 spares sitting on the back of my disco. The particular pattern I'm going to use is these 2 spares. I'm going to cross them over, and they're going to go to the front. The fronts will then move to the rear, and the rears will be onto the spare. There's so many different combinations of how you can rotate a tyre. I don't think it really matters which way you do it, to be honest, as long as you're doing it the same way every time. So let's get into it. So okay guys, before we get started here, this is pretty much the basic tools that you can get away with. This is the factory supplied wheel brace. You should have one of those in your car. If you don't, make a point to try and get something sorted. Now, I'm using a big 12-ton jack. This is just my shop jack. Most cases, you should be able to get away with your factory jack, although a lot of them are scissor jacks, so they're kind of average at best. And also, when I redo mine up, I'm just going to be using a torque wrench to torque the wheel nuts. you can get away with just the factory brace most of the times. Just don't go nuts and over torque them when you retighten them back up again. Yeah, and make sure after 50 kilometres or so, you just give them a recheck as well. Just make sure those wheel nuts are tight. Now, just a point while I'm here. Now, these are relatively new tyres, but I did mention a little bit earlier about old spare tyres. Now, some of you may or may not know how to check the tyre age. Now, we can have a look at a section here. So, here's our tyre size. It's all our load rating. There's other info on there. What you want to look for is this little code here. Now, sorry that's upside down, but you see 30, 20. So that first 30 is the week and 20 is the year of manufacture. So all tyres should have this date code on there. Really easy to check them, guys. So personally, I wouldn't run a tyre over 10 years old. So before we go nuts and jack up a corner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run around all four corners. I'm going to just loosen all the wheel nuts. If you don't have a rattle gun, it's probably a lot easier. Just make sure you're in gear, handbrake's on, crack them all off while everything's on the ground. It'll be much easier than trying to do it when the wheel's in the air. If you've got a rattle gun, it's not going to matter so much. I'm not going to use a rattle gun on these particular wheel nuts because the Land Rover, as you can probably see, there's a little bit of movement there. It's actually like an aluminium or stainless steel outer casing on the wheel nut itself, and rattle guns just destroy it and then make it impossible to get a socket back on the nut. So like I said, easiest way is just to crack these off while the car's still on the ground. Now if you're struggling, good tip, just get on there, brace yourself against the car, and crack your weight down on it like that. Really easy to do, and such a handy method to perfect, so you know what to do when you're out and about. You don't run into that problem. So we're going to do that round all four, and I'll bring my spares off as well and start with that. Okay, so now we've got all our wheels loosened off, all the wheel nuts loosened off. We're going to start on this front right corner. I'm going to jack this one up, basically only as much as what I need, just to get the wheel off. I'll pull it off, throw the slap the new one on. For jacking points, probably really important to note, check with the owner's manual where your jacking points are and what works for your factory jack. Every car is going to be different. I'm not going to give any advice right now about where you should be jacking from. Once you've done it a few times, you'll get a bit of experience. You'll know where you should be looking to jack it off. Another point why you should rotate 5. If you're doing this at home and you don't have any jack stands, look, we all agree you probably should be using jack stands when you've got a vehicle in the air, but for this simple job, I generally don't bother, and I just keep my body outside of the car anyway. Is when you remove your tyre, you then need to move it to another position. So if you've got your spare and that's part of your rotation, you can just basically pull that on, slap it on your first position and work your way around. If you're not including your spare, then chances are you might end up pulling your spare out anyway, slap it on temporarily, you got to jack down, move to another corner, and then at the end of it, you still got to take your spare off and put the tyre that's going in that position back on, the spare back in the boot, all that sort of stuff. So you might as well just do it once and whack it on. Anyway, let's get this corner jacked up. that's off just as much as what we need, no more, no less. And all these, this is the first rotation I've done since I put these tyres on, so all the wheel nuts were probably a little over tight. That's kind of what happens when you let tyre fitters loose on these things. You know, generally speaking, I would crack them all off, re-torque them to what I know is the correct specs. But you know, it's been the lead up to Christmas and everything when these went on, so you know, just been a little pressed for time. So yeah, wife gets in the way. And you can see that's possibly wobbling about a bit. Now, tightening sequence. 5 stud, basically start here, just nip them up, move diagonally across, move diagonally across again, across again, again. You basically don't want to go around in a straight circle. It's essentially a flange, so what will happen is you'll tighten up evenly like this, and then it will basically rock the rim on the flange, and you'll end up with some overstressed studs. So basically that first check, just go around the diagonal pattern. Now 4 studs, it'll be diagonal there, 6, then it'll be just straight opposites, real easy. Like my Chev, 8 on that, so it's just more work to do. Once you've got that basically nipped up like that, then I'm going to go through with my torque wrench. I'll just drop that down. When I have the right end of the jack. There you go. A lot of jacks, especially when you're doing fairly high lifts like I have to do on the disco here, the body can move on the jack. Just real important to be aware of that. So for the discos here, 140 Newton meters is my torque. So start on any point. There we go. Once you've done the torque and that crisscross, that's when I'll then go around just to double check all the torques. Done. Alright, so I won't bore you with the rest of the video of doing each corner as we go along. It's kind of repetitive, and I'm sure if you got this far, you'll know what to do for the rest of it. So I'll finish up. If you've been with me for this long, then thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Cheers guys.